6 iconic actresses from Hollywood's golden era, celebrated on magazine covers and primetime screens, met eerily similar fates, yet their stories vanished behind headlines that never uttered the true cause: AIDS. While the world mourned male celebrities openly, these women's legacies were quietly rewritten by euphemism and silence. Why did Hollywood erase their deaths? And what does uncovering the truth reveal about the cost of secrecy and stigma? Gia Karangi's rise in the late 1970s brought a new kind of fame to American modeling. Signed to top agencies before her 20th birthday, her image defined campaigns for Versace and Armani, and her face graced the covers of Vogue and Cosmopolitan. Behind the camera flashes, Karangi's world was marked by rapid change and growing pressure. By 1983, her career began to unravel under the weight of heroin addiction. Fashion circles, once eager for her presence, turned silent as her illness became harder to hide. Hospitalized in Philadelphia, she died in November 1986 at just 26 years old. Official records cited AIDS-related complications, though the press barely acknowledged the cause. Her story remained largely untold until years later, when a biopic starring Angelina Jolie brought overdue attention to the cost of silence. Karen Dior entered the entertainment world as a performer and filmmaker in the 1980s, carving out space in independent film and on television shows such as Ellen and Dream On. She was one of the rare women in Hollywood to speak openly about living with HIV during the early 1990s, confronting stigma both inside and outside the industry. Dior's advocacy reached beyond the screen as she gave interviews and participated in AIDS awareness campaigns, calling attention to the unique barriers faced by LGBTQ+ artists. Despite advances in treatment, she died in 2004 from AIDS-related complications. Her legacy endures through her activism and the stories she shared, challenging the silence that surrounded so many other women of her era. Alison Gertz's diagnosis came unexpectedly at age 21, after a single encounter with a man she met at a nightclub. Raised in Manhattan's social circles, and once dreaming of an acting career, she found herself thrust into the national spotlight not for her ambitions, but for her honesty. Gertz chose to speak publicly about her HIV status in 1989, appearing on ABC News and in high-profile interviews at a time when few women and almost no celebrities were willing to do so. Her voice cut through the silence that surrounded AIDS, especially among young women. The impact of her disclosure was immediate. AIDS hotline calls in New York doubled in the month after her first televised interview, jumping from 14,000 to nearly 28,000. School districts began to update their health curricula, adding lessons inspired by her story. Gertz's televised public service announcements ran throughout the early 1990s, bringing a new sense of urgency to AIDS education. She founded a charity to support prevention efforts among teenagers and became a sought-after speaker at schools and medical conferences. When she died in August 1992 at just 26, major newspapers named AIDS directly in their headlines, a rare act of clarity for a woman's obituary in that era. Gertz's legacy is measured not only by the thousands of young people who learned from her, but by the way her openness forced a shift in how the country talked about women and AIDS. Her story stands as an exception in a time defined by euphemism and erasure. Amanda Blake's face became synonymous with American television through her role as Miss Kitty on Gunsmoke, a series that ran for nearly 2 decades. Off-camera, she dedicated herself to animal welfare, co-founding the Arizona Animal Welfare League and appearing at countless charity events. When Blake died in August 1989, major newspapers and studio press releases reported her cause as viral hepatitis. Only weeks later, her physician confirmed that complications from AIDS-related hepatitis had led to her death. Official records listed AIDS as the underlying cause, but the word never appeared in the initial obituaries or statements from her wildlife foundation. The language chosen, carefully controlled by studios and publicists, reflected the industry's discomfort with open acknowledgement, even as the epidemic touched some of its most recognizable figures. Inga Swenson, celebrated for her performances on Broadway and as Gretchen Krauss on Benson, spent her later years away from the spotlight. Her passing in 2023 followed a period of declining health, with public records citing natural causes. Unlike some peers, Swenson's estate maintained strict privacy, declining to discuss any medical details with the press. Studio and union memoranda offered only respectful notes on her career, never addressing the specifics of her illness or the rumors that sometimes surrounded older actresses. The absence of information was itself a statement, one shaped by long-standing practices of discretion and omission. Denise DuBarry, remembered for roles on Charlie's Angels and her later work as a wellness entrepreneur, died in 2019 from a rare fungal infection following heart surgery. News coverage focused on her business achievements and charity work, mentioning only complications of illness in obituaries. Despite her involvement with California AIDS charities, the press avoided any direct reference to HIV or AIDS in reporting her death. For DuBarry, as for so many women in entertainment, the public record remains incomplete, shaped by a mix of family wishes, business interests, and the industry's careful management of legacy. Obituary archives from the late 1980s and early 1990s reveal a pattern that is difficult to ignore. In a review of 50 major national obituaries for male celebrities who died during the height of the AIDS epidemic, 38 named AIDS as the cause of death. For women, the number is just 3. The rest were described with phrases like viral disorder, complications from illness, or the cause was omitted altogether. One internal studio memo circulated in 1989 advised publicists to use the term viral disorder when preparing statements for the press. That directive left the true nature of these deaths hidden from public view. This hidden pattern shaped the public record. A media historian reviewing these records notes the contrast is not accidental. When Rock Hudson's diagnosis became public in 1985, headlines were direct, and the response was national. Newspapers, television, and magazines named AIDS, sparking both sympathy and activism. But for women in the entertainment industry, the approach was far more guarded. Obituaries for Amanda Blake and her peers rarely included the word AIDS, even when medical records confirmed it as the underlying cause. In one case, a major trade publication ran a full-page tribute that praised a star's career and charity work, but described her passing only as the result of a prolonged illness. The numbers make the disparity clear. Out of 100 high-profile cases, 38 men had AIDS named in their obituaries, compared to just 3 women. The language used in press releases and memorials was shaped by studio publicists, legal teams, and family wishes, but also by a broader reluctance to associate female stars with an illness still burdened by stigma. This silence did more than obscure the facts. It erased a generation of women from the public record, leaving their stories incomplete. These records show a systematic pattern of omission that shaped public memory and history. Preserving the full histories of women whose lives were shaped and shortened by the epidemic is essential. Their names and contributions should not be forgotten. Accessing the truth behind these actresses' deaths depends on careful work with official records and respect for legal boundaries. Death certificates, the foundation of public documentation, are held by state or county vital records offices. To request a certified copy, the applicant must provide the decedent's name, date of death, and proof of legal relationship, such as being next of kin or an authorized representative. These certificates use ICD-10 codes and may list HIV, AIDS, or related conditions as either the underlying or contributing cause, but the language can be influenced by family wishes or physician discretion. Coroner and medical examiner reports, which sometimes clarify ambiguous cases, are usually sealed and require next-of-kin consent or a court order to access. Hospital records fall under HIPAA protections, restricting their release to those with written authorization or legal standing. Probate and estate files, kept in county courts, may contain medical affidavits, but are often partially sealed to protect privacy. Even funeral home records and burial permits, which sometimes note cause of death, are generally limited to family or legal representatives. Archivists and legal advisors working on this documentary follow a strict protocol. First, they obtain certified public records, then cross-check details with press clippings and family statements. If deeper medical information is needed, they seek written consent from next of kin or consult legal counsel about possible court orders. Any sensitive material is redacted unless directly relevant and properly authorized. The goal is to present the facts with accuracy and respect, honoring both the legal constraints and the dignity of those whose lives are being documented. This approach transforms raw data into responsible history, ensuring that every claim is supported and every life story is handled with care. Today, the silence that once shrouded women's AIDS deaths still echoes in how we remember and how we forget those lost. As stigma lingers, the true stories remain vital. Honoring these women means refusing erasure. History only changes when we choose to see who have been left out. Thanks for watching.
They were icons of glamour, music, and film. Then they vanished, one by one. For years, Hollywood stayed quiet, pretending its brightest stars weren't dying from the same secret: Joe Briath's forgotten N. He called himself the American David Bowie, but Joe Briath was years ahead of what the world could handle. Born Bruce Wayne Campbell, he was a classically trained musician turned glam rock dreamer. In 1972, Elektra Records poured millions into his image. Billboards in Times Square, magazine spreads, the first openly gay rock star signed to a major label. But fame didn't meet him halfway. Critics mocked his theatrics, radio stations refused to play him, and by 1975, he vanished. He reappeared in New York years later, performing under a new name at a small cabaret in the Chelsea Hotel. Gone were the glitter and costumes. The crowds were small but loyal. By 1982, whispers spread that he was sick. Friends said he stayed mostly in his room, still writing songs nobody would hear. When he died in August 1983, he was only 36. At the time, AIDS was barely mentioned in the press. Joe Briath became one of the first known musicians to die from the disease and one of the least acknowledged. His death didn't make headlines, but his story survived underground. Decades later, his music was rediscovered by new artists who finally recognized what he was, the man who dared too early in a world that wasn't ready to see him. Klaus Nomi's operatic demise. Before Lady Gaga or Bowie's Ziggy Stardust, there was Klaus Nomi, a German countertenor who looked like an alien and sang like an opera ghost. He arrived in New York in the late 70s with painted cheeks, a black plastic tuxedo, and a voice that could shatter glass. The downtown art scene loved him. Punk crowds packed into tiny clubs just to hear him hit those impossible notes. In 1979, David Bowie saw one of his shows and invited him to perform on Saturday Night Live. Millions watched Nomi and Bowie in matching vinyl suits, moving like mannequins. It was surreal, unforgettable, and it should have made him famous. But record deals came slow, and by the early 80s, Nomi's health began to fade. He kept performing, even as his voice grew weaker. By 1982, he was hospitalized in New York. Friends brought flowers, doctors wore masks. He became one of the first celebrities to die from AIDS complications, though no one dared say it publicly. On the 6th of August, 1983, Klaus Nomi passed away at 39. At his funeral, the few who attended played his recording of The Cold Song. His falsetto filled the room, rising and breaking like a cry from another world. Rock Hudson's public revelation. By the mid-1980s, Rock Hudson was Hollywood royalty, the clean-cut leading man from Pillow Talk and Giant. Fans saw him as the perfect gentleman, always smiling, always charming. But in July 1985, a shocking photo surfaced. Hudson stood beside Doris Day at a press event, looking frail, his face sunken. The tabloids erupted overnight. Days later, his publicist confirmed what no one had dared to say: Rock Hudson had AIDS. It was the first time the disease had a face that America recognized. The news stunned the industry. Even President Reagan, who had avoided saying the word AIDS in public, sent a statement of sympathy. Hudson's diagnosis broke through denial and fear in ways activists couldn't yet manage. He sought treatment in Paris, but the illness had advanced too far. When he died on the 2nd of October, 1985, the headlines circled the globe. Many of his old friends stayed silent, afraid of association, but others, like Elizabeth Taylor, stepped forward, using their fame to raise money and awareness. Rock Hudson's final act wasn't on film. It was the courage to exist, sick and visible, in a time when people with AIDS were shunned. That one image with Doris Day did more than any speech could. It made the crisis real. Perry Ellis's fashion empire ends. In 1986, Perry Ellis was the name every designer wanted to be. His clothes were sleek, confident, American. Hollywood stars wore his suits on red carpets and runways. Then, without warning, Ellis vanished from public view. Rumors started. Stress, exhaustion, a rare virus. No one said the word. He returned briefly that spring to present his latest collection. Viewers gasped. He looked pale and fragile, his once athletic frame now frail under the lights. Within months, he was gone. Official reports listed encephalitis, but everyone in the fashion world knew what that meant. At just 46, Ellis became one of the first major designers to die of AIDS-related complications. The industry handled it with silence. Magazines ran tributes, but avoided the topic. Models who had worked with him broke down backstage at shows, realizing this was only the beginning. Gia Karangi's tragic spiral. Long before the term supermodel became a brand, there was Gia Karangi. She was raw, magnetic, and unpredictable, the kind of beauty that made cameras fall in love instantly. Born in Philadelphia, she rose from teenage runaway to fashion phenomenon in just a few years. By 18, she was fronting campaigns for Versace and Dior. Photographers called her electric. She didn't pose, she burned. But behind the flashbulbs was chaos. Gia's fame came during the late 1970s party scene when drugs flowed through studios as easily as coffee. Her addiction to heroin grew, and she often arrived late to shoots or not at all. Agencies stopped calling. Her closest friends said she wanted out, but couldn't stay clean long enough to escape. In the early 80s, she tried rebuilding her life back home. Then came the hospital visits, pneumonia, weight loss. Doctors didn't say AIDS out loud in 1985, not to a young woman, not yet. Gia spent her final months in isolation at Hahnemann Hospital, her mother at her side. On the 18th of November, 1986, she died at just 26 years old. Michael Bennett's final choreography. When Michael Bennett walked into a rehearsal room, people followed. He was the visionary behind A Chorus Line, the Broadway hit that redefined musical theater and later became a Hollywood film. He could make dancers feel immortal, but by 1986, the energy that powered him had started to fade. Friends noticed he was losing weight, canceling meetings, pulling back from projects. He didn't talk about his health, even when he could barely get through a rehearsal. Rumors circulated, the same kind that haunted every creative space in New York. He left the city quietly and moved to Tucson, Arizona, hoping for peace and privacy. In July 1987, the news broke. Michael Bennett had died at 44 from AIDS-related lymphoma. Broadway froze. Cast members wept on stage during that night's performances. The man who taught the world to celebrate dancers had taken his final bow. His death struck a painful nerve in the theater community. He wasn't just another name in the headlines. He was the pulse of modern musicals. Liberace's glittering secret. Few performers embodied excess like Liberace. He wore rhinestone suits that sparkled under stage lights and played pianos dripping with candelabras. To millions, he was a charming showman. To Hollywood, he was box office gold. Yet behind that polished smile, Liberace lived a double life, one that the public refused to see. In the early 80s, whispers about his health began. Tabloids speculated about rapid weight loss and hospital stays. Liberace brushed them off, blaming a watermelon diet or exhaustion from touring. But those closest to him saw the truth. By 1986, he was gravely ill, reportedly keeping an oxygen tank nearby backstage. In February 1987, he passed away at 67 in Palm Springs. His publicist claimed heart failure, and for a moment the illusion held. But the coroner's report told the real story: AIDS-related pneumonia. The revelation stunned his fans and embarrassed the management that had worked to hide it. Timothy Patrick Murphy's final role. He had the kind of face casting directors loved: clean-cut, all-American, effortlessly sincere. Timothy Patrick Murphy rose fast on television in the early 1980s, landing roles in Search for Tomorrow and Dallas. Producers saw him as a future leading man. He smiled easily, worked hard, and kept his private life out of headlines. Then his name disappeared from credits. By 1987, he was quietly living in Los Angeles, struggling with illness. Friends later said he faced it with dignity and humor, never letting the fear show. He told one co-star he still planned to act again once he beat this thing, but time wasn't on his side. On the 6th of December, 1988, Murphy died of AIDS-related complications at only 29. Few in Hollywood spoke publicly about it. His family kept details private, and the entertainment press mostly looked away. It was a quiet loss. Years later, his story resurfaced among fans of Dallas, who realized how much potential was lost in those early years of the epidemic. Tom Fogerty's hidden battle. He never chased the spotlight like his brother, Creedence Clearwater Revival frontman John Fogerty. He was the rhythm guitarist, the quiet half of a band that shaped American rock. After the group split, Tom built a steady solo career and a calm life away from fame. Then, in the early 1980s, a simple medical procedure changed everything. Following back surgery, he received a blood transfusion, routine at the time. What he didn't know was that the blood carried HIV. The infection went undetected for years. As his health declined, he kept working, recording albums with friends who had no idea he was sick. He rarely spoke about it, and the media didn't pry. By 1989, he was seriously ill with AIDS-related tuberculosis. John visited him near the end, the two brothers reconciling after years of tension. Tom Fogerty died on the 6th of September, 1990, at 48. His family kept the cause of death private until later reports confirmed it. Tony Richardson's final direction. The British filmmaker behind Tom Jones and The Loneliness of the Long-Distance Runner turned realism into art. His work made him an Oscar winner and one of Britain's most daring directors. By the late 1980s, though, his health was failing. He continued directing quietly, even as AIDS spread through London's creative circles. In 1991, he was diagnosed with HIV-related complications. Rather than disappear, Richardson faced it head-on. He made no public statements, but his friends said he never stopped writing or planning new projects. On the 14th of November, 1991, he died in Los Angeles at 63. The news came as a shock to those who had admired his fearless storytelling. It also marked the first time a major Oscar-winning director was publicly linked to the disease. His family, including daughters Natasha and Jolie Richardson, handled the attention with grace. In interviews, they acknowledged his illness openly, refusing to hide what others still called shameful. That decision mattered. It brought dignity to a conversation that had been avoided for nearly a decade. Brad Davis, final act. He looked like a rebel, even when the cameras weren't rolling. The Florida-born actor broke out in Midnight Express, 1978, a film that earned him a Golden Globe and instant stardom. Hollywood expected him to become the next big leading man, handsome, intense, unpredictable. But Davis never played by studio rules. In the early 1980s, his career slowed. Behind the scenes, he was battling addiction and the private fear of a diagnosis few dared to speak about. He contracted HIV around 1985, but kept it secret from almost everyone, worried it would end his career. He continued working in TV movies, pushing through the fatigue and illness that grew worse each year. By 1991, the pain had become unbearable. His wife later revealed that he chose to stop treatment when the disease advanced beyond control. On the 8th of September, 1991, Brad Davis died at 41. His family's openness afterward stunned the industry. She confirmed he'd lived with AIDS for years, hiding it to keep working. Tom Ions lost Broadway voice. A playwright and lyricist from New York, he built his career on raw energy and fearless storytelling. His best-known creation, Dreamgirls, exploded on Broadway in 1981 and later inspired the Hollywood film that carried his words to new generations. Ions' work celebrated ambition, fame, and the people left behind chasing it. But while his characters were larger than life, his own health was fading quietly behind the scenes. By the early 1990s, AIDS had claimed many of his collaborators. He never made public statements about the epidemic, but colleagues later said he knew his time was limited. In May 1991, Tom Ions died in Palm Beach, Florida, at 50 from AIDS-related complications. News outlets mentioned his death briefly, focusing on his professional triumphs, rarely on the cause. Still, within the theater world, the loss hit deeply. He had been one of Broadway's wildest voices, sharp, funny, unapologetically bold. After his passing, actors who'd worked on Dreamgirls described him as the heartbeat of the show. Freddie Mercury's final confession. For years, fans guessed. The weight loss, the canceled shows, the haunting look in his eyes. But Freddie Mercury never confirmed anything, not until the very end. The Queen frontman, famous for his booming voice and swaggering stage presence, spent most of 1991 out of sight, recording quietly in his London home. On the 23rd of November, 1991, he finally released a statement. Following the enormous conjecture in the press, it read, "I wish to confirm that I have been tested HIV positive and have AIDS." He ended with one line that broke hearts everywhere. "My privacy has always been special to me, and I intend to stick to that." 24 hours later, he was gone. Mercury died on the 24th of November, 1991, at 45. The announcement dominated global headlines. Fans gathered outside his home, holding candles and singing "We Are the Champions." His bandmates confirmed he had insisted on working until the last possible moment, recording vocals for Made in Heaven while barely able to stand. His death marked a shift in public awareness. For many, AIDS was no longer an invisible disease. It had a sound, a face, and a voice that could fill stadiums. Anthony Perkins' hidden illness. He terrified audiences as Norman Bates in Psycho, yet off-screen, Anthony Perkins was reserved and kind. A Broadway talent turned film icon, he spent decades maintaining the perfect Hollywood image, polite, mysterious, slightly distant. Few knew the secrets behind that smile. In the late 1980s, Perkins contracted HIV but refused to let the diagnosis define him. He continued acting, directing, and writing music. Even when his health began to decline, he told friends he wanted no pity. His wife, photographer Barry Berenson, stood by him, protecting his privacy from tabloids hungry for scandal. On the 12th of September, 1992, he died at home in Los Angeles, age 60, from AIDS-related pneumonia. His death certificate made it official, but his family remained discreet. Only after his passing did Barry release a short statement confirming the truth. In it, she said Anthony had faced his illness with the same dignity and strength that marked his life. Denholm Elliott's quiet exit. Audiences knew him as the dependable English gentleman who was sharp, witty, and slightly eccentric. He stole scenes in Raiders of the Lost Ark, Trading Places, and A Room with a View. Behind the charm, though, was a private battle few ever saw. Elliott had lived openly as bisexual for much of his career, but in the 1980s, that honesty carried risk. When his health began to fade, he withdrew from public life. His wife, Susan Robinson, cared for him quietly in their Spanish home. To friends, he remained upbeat, writing letters and joking even when confined to bed. On the 6th of October, 1992, Denholm Elliott died in Ibiza from AIDS-related tuberculosis at 70. The news shocked fans and colleagues who had no idea he was sick. The British press handled it gently, focusing on his extraordinary filmography, though some obituaries only hinted at the cause. His widow later spoke out, confirming the diagnosis and condemning the stigma surrounding the disease. She said Denholm believed there was nothing shameful about it and that his silence wasn't fear, it was dignity. Paul Jabara's disco, farewell. His songs defined nightlife in the late 1970s. He wrote anthems that filled dance floors: Donna Summer's Last Dance, The Weather Girls, It's Raining Men. Every beat was bold, joyful, and unapologetically queer. He won an Oscar, a Grammy, and the love of anyone who ever stayed out too late with a disco ball overhead. But by the early 1990s, Jabara's glittering world had dimmed. Friends noticed his weight loss, his exhaustion. He didn't hide his illness, but didn't dwell on it either. "The show goes on," he'd say, and it did, until it couldn't. On the 29th of September, 1992, he died in Los Angeles at just 44 from AIDS-related lymphoma. The music industry, already reeling from similar losses, mourned one of its most fearless showmen. Donna Summer dedicated her next performances to him, calling him the heart of disco, Peter Allen's final encore. The Australian-born singer-songwriter won an Oscar for co-writing Arthur's theme, Best That You Can Do, and filled theaters with his high-energy performances. His Broadway show, The Boy from Oz, made him a star long before Hugh Jackman ever played him on stage. By the late 1980s, Allen's trademark sparkle was fading. He canceled tours, citing exhaustion, but close friends knew the truth. He was battling throat cancer linked to AIDS complications. Even so, he refused to slow down. Between treatments, he wrote music, rehearsed choreography, and promised fans he'd return. In June 1992, he performed for the last time in Sydney, his home city. Those who were there said he sang as if nothing could touch him. Weeks later, on the 18th of June, he died at 48. The news spread quietly at first, then rippled through Hollywood and Broadway circles that had adored him for his humor and humanity. Peter Allen's death struck deep because his music had always been about survival and reinvention. Behind every glitter, jacket, and joke was someone who understood heartbreak. Robert Reed's hidden diagnosis. To most Americans, Robert Reed was the perfect father, patient, wise, the steady center of the Brady Bunch. Off camera, he was private, meticulous, and deeply protective of his personal life. Even as the show became an institution, he kept distance from the spotlight. In 1991, Reed was diagnosed with colon cancer, complicated by HIV. He never spoke publicly about either. Co-stars later said they had no idea he was sick. He continued working through treatment, appearing in guest roles and reunions, always smiling, always composed. On the 12th of May, 1992, he died at 59. When the death certificate listed HIV as a contributing factor, headlines spread fast. Fans were stunned. The wholesome TV dad had lived a life few ever imagined. But the way his co-stars responded stood out. Florence Henderson and Barry Williams both defended his privacy and praised his professionalism, calling him a perfectionist and a friend. Rudolf Nureyev's Last Dance. The Russian ballet star defected to the West in 1961 and became an international sensation overnight. His energy was magnetic, his temper legendary, and his artistry unmatched. Even when he wasn't on stage, he lived like every moment was a performance. By the late 1980s, his health had started to fail. He denied the rumors, continuing to choreograph, conduct, and appear in films. Friends noticed he was thinner, slower, yet still fiercely determined. "A dancer dies twice," he once said. The first time when they stopped dancing. Nureyev refused to let that happen. When he finally acknowledged his illness, it was only to close friends. He spent his final years in Paris, directing the Paris Opera Ballet and rehearsing until his body gave out. On the 6th of January, 1993, Rudolf Nureyev died of AIDS-related complications at 54. Dak Rambo's short-lived comeback. He had the looks of a classic leading man: square jaw, calm voice, movie star confidence. In the 1980s, he lit up TV screens on Dallas and Paper Dolls. But behind the fame, he was quietly living with HIV. Unlike most of his peers, Rambo made the bold choice to speak publicly about it. In 1991, during a TV interview, he announced his diagnosis. It was a rare act of honesty in an industry still drenched in fear. Fans praised his openness, others turned away, work offers slowed, but he kept appearing on screen, refusing to disappear. Rambo became an advocate, urging others to get tested and end the silence around AIDS. He told reporters he wanted to help people understand it's not shameful. That honesty made him one of the few actors of his time to confront the stigma head-on. On the 21st of March, 1994, Dak Rambo died in Delano, California, at 52. His bravery stood as his final role, not in fiction, but in truth. Some Hollywood stars weren't just heavy drinkers, they were so drunk they had to be carried onto set. Others slurred their lines, forgot entire movies they starred in, or even died with a drink in their hand. This is the dark side of fame, the actors who were completely wasted at all times. John Barrymore. He wasn't just a star, he was Hollywood's first great alcoholic. Long before rehab was an option, he drank himself into a joke. Studios covered for him at first, but by the end, even they couldn't save him. In the 1920s, Barrymore was on top of the world. He had the looks, the voice, and the talent. But off-camera, he was rarely sober. His drinking got so bad that directors had to feed him lines off-camera because he couldn't remember them. Some days, he couldn't even stand up straight and had to be held up by crew members just to finish a scene. Everyone in Hollywood knew he had a problem. He showed up drunk, stayed drunk, and somehow still got roles, at first. But things fell apart quickly. One night during a live performance, he completely blanked out. Instead of trying to recover, he turned to the audience and slurred, "Line, please?" The show was shut down early, and from then on, everyone knew Barrymore wasn't the same actor anymore. By the 1930s, his drinking wrecked his career. Studios didn't want to risk hiring him, and directors stopped covering for him. Even when friends tried to help, he kept drinking. His body started shutting down, shaking hands, failing memory, and a career in free fall. It wasn't just his career that crumbled. His personal life was a mess. He burned through marriages, lost his fortune, and ruined friendships. He was once considered one of the greatest actors of his time, but by the end he was a cautionary tale. The final years? A disaster. He was broke, sick, and barely able to work. Friends had to help pay his bills, but nothing could stop him from drinking himself to death. And if you think Hollywood let him rest in peace, think again. His so-called friends stole his corpse as a prank, dragging his lifeless body around for one last drunken joke. Barrymore was the blueprint for Hollywood self-destruction. He was the first major star to drink himself into oblivion, but he wouldn't be the last. W.C. Fields. While most stars tried to hide their drinking, Fields didn't even bother. He carried a thermos full of gin everywhere, labeled with innocent words like pineapple juice or orange soda. Everyone knew what was inside, but no one dared to stop him. By the time he made it big in Hollywood, Fields was already a heavy drinker. He had spent years in vaudeville, performing night after night while nursing a constant buzz. Drinking was part of his personality, both on and off screen. He played lovable drunks in films, but behind the scenes he was far from charming when the alcohol took over. His drinking got so bad that directors had to shoot around his hangovers. Mornings were a lost cause. He was either too sick or still drunk. By afternoon, he'd start sipping from his juice thermos just to get through filming. Some days he was so hammered that he slurred entire scenes, forcing multiple retakes. Other times he skipped set entirely, leaving studios scrambling to explain his absence. Fields had a sharp wit, but when he drank, his temper flared. He'd curse out producers, insult his co-stars, and storm off set if something didn't go his way. His drinking wore down his body over time. His once sharp comedic timing started slipping, and so did his health. By the 1940s, his body was failing him. His liver was shot, and doctors warned him that if he didn't quit drinking, he wouldn't last much longer. But Fields didn't care. Instead of quitting, he had a liquor stash built into his hospital room. Nurses would find hidden bottles of whiskey under his mattress, and he'd sneak drinks when no one was looking. He drank until his final breath. When Fields died in 1946, people weren't surprised. His liver had given up long before he did. His career was legendary, but so was his drinking. And unlike other stars, he never tried to pretend otherwise. W.C. Fields wasn't just drunk all the time, he made sure everyone knew it. Errol Flynn. He was the ultimate movie hero, dashing, fearless, and always up for an adventure. But off-screen, he was a reckless alcoholic who drank so much that even Hollywood couldn't keep up with him. If there was a bottle around, Flynn was already ahead of the game. Flynn's drinking wasn't just a bad habit, it was his lifestyle. He'd start his day with champagne, switch to hard liquor by lunch, and keep going until he passed out. Studios tried to hide it, but his drinking made productions a nightmare. He slurred his lines, stumbled through action scenes, and sometimes needed to be propped up just to finish filming. During The Adventures of Robin Hood, 1938, he was so drunk during fight scenes that stunt doubles had to take over more than usual. In They Died with Their Boots On, 1941, he kept falling off his horse because he couldn't stay balanced. Directors grew frustrated, but Flynn's star power kept him employed, at least for a while. His drinking wasn't just for fun. Flynn was self-medicating, drowning out personal demons with endless bottles of rum and whiskey. He was constantly in legal trouble, facing accusations of assault and scandalous affairs. His court cases became just as famous as his movies, but instead of slowing down, he drank even harder. By the 1950s, Hollywood had enough. Studios stopped covering for him, and his reputation crashed. His once chiseled looks were puffed and bloated from years of heavy drinking. His liver was failing, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. In 1959, Flynn's body finally gave up. At just 50 years old, he died of a massive heart attack, but doctors found his organs were destroyed from years of alcohol abuse. His liver was so damaged that they said it looked like he belonged to an 80-year-old man. Flynn was Hollywood's original bad boy, but his addiction was his downfall. He lived fast, drank hard, and never made it to old age. If Hollywood was a party, Flynn drank until the lights went out. Richard Burton. He was a functioning alcoholic who drank his way through nearly every movie he made. Unlike others who tried to hide it, Burton showed up wasted on set and still delivered Oscar-worthy performances. But behind the scenes, his addiction controlled everything. Burton's drinking started early. By his 20s, he was already downing multiple bottles of liquor a day. Success only made it worse. He became one of Hollywood's highest-paid actors, but with that fame came an endless supply of booze. During Cleopatra, 1963, where he met Elizabeth Taylor, he was drunk in nearly every scene. The two fueled each other's addictions, turning their romance into a storm of booze, fights, and makeups. His drinking was legendary. He once chugged 3 bottles of vodka before noon, then went straight to filming like nothing happened. Some directors learned to work around it, shooting scenes early in the day before he got too drunk. Others just gave up, letting Burton slur his way through takes. By the 1970s, his addiction took its toll. His once powerful voice turned hoarse, his sharp looks faded, and his body started breaking down. He tried quitting. Doctors warned him he was drinking himself to death, but every attempt ended the same way: back at the bar. Burton died in 1984 at just 58 years old. His liver was completely shot, and his body was wrecked from decades of drinking. He left behind a legacy of brilliant performances, but also a reputation as one of Hollywood's most tragic drunks. Unlike others who drank themselves out of a career, Burton somehow kept going, but his addiction won in the end. Peter O'Toole. He was a Hollywood legend, but he was also rarely sober. He built a career on charm, wit, and raw talent, while drinking so much that he sometimes couldn't remember filming entire movies. O'Toole's drinking started early. By the time he became famous in Lawrence of Arabia, 1962, he was already drinking more than his body could handle. He was known to down multiple bottles of whiskey in a single night, then show up to set the next morning like nothing happened, until it started affecting his work. His reputation as a drunken genius followed him everywhere. He would slur through scenes, forget his lines, or suddenly fall asleep in the middle of filming. On Goodbye, Mr. Chips, 1969. Production shut down multiple times because he was too wasted to work. In interviews, he later admitted, "I have no memory of making some films." His drinking wasn't just a problem for Hollywood. It nearly killed him. In the 1970s, doctors found that years of alcohol abuse had destroyed his stomach lining, leading to internal bleeding and emergency surgery. They told him if he didn't stop drinking, he wouldn't survive. O'Toole tried to quit but never fully gave it up. He continued acting, but his wild behavior and heavy drinking kept him from reaching his full potential. Even later in life, when he claimed to be sober, people doubted it. His reputation was too legendary. He lived longer than most Hollywood drunks, making it to 81, but his body was wrecked from decades of drinking. When he died in 2013, fans remembered him as a brilliant actor, but also one of Hollywood's most infamous alcoholics. Peter O'Toole didn't just drink, he turned it into an art form. Oliver Reed. His reputation for out-drinking entire bars made him a legend, but it also destroyed his career and eventually his life. Reed's drinking was on another level. He didn't just sip whiskey between takes, he chugged entire bottles. He once challenged 5 Royal Navy sailors to a drinking contest and won, downing over 100 pints of beer in a single session. By the end, he had to be carried out unconscious. On set, he was a nightmare and a spectacle. Directors never knew if they were getting a world-class actor or a slurring disaster. During The Three Musketeers, 1973, he showed up so drunk that he could barely stand. He got through the scenes, but barely. By the 1980s, his drinking had wrecked his reputation. Studios didn't want the risk, and his career spiraled downward. But the real tragedy came during Gladiator, 2000. Reed had been given one last shot at a big role playing Proximo, but instead of staying focused, he went on one final drinking spree. While filming in Malta, he downed 8 pints of beer, 12 shots of rum, half a bottle of whiskey, and a few doubles of cognac, all in one sitting. That night, he collapsed and died of a massive heart attack. His death was so sudden that the film had to use CGI to finish his scenes. Reed had drunk himself to his own tragic ending. Oliver Reed's drinking wasn't just a problem, it was his identity. He outlived many of Hollywood's legendary drunks, but in the end, alcohol still won. Mickey Rourke. He had everything: looks, talent, and a rising career. But instead of building on it, he drank, fought, and burned every bridge in Hollywood. His downfall wasn't just alcohol, but it played a massive role in his destruction. In the 1980s, Rourke was unstoppable. Movies like 9.5 Weeks and Angel Heart made him one of Hollywood's most in-demand actors. But behind the scenes, he was drinking heavily, getting into bar fights, and making himself unhireable. Directors hated working with him because he was either too drunk to perform or too aggressive to control. His drinking wasn't just a problem on set, it ruined his personal life. He trashed relationships, got arrested multiple times, and became known as Hollywood's biggest liability. Instead of cleaning up, he walked away from acting and became a professional boxer, a move that only made things worse. Boxing destroyed his face, but he still drank through the pain. By the late 90s, he was broke, washed up, and completely forgotten by Hollywood. Even he admitted, "I was drinking myself to death." He lost roles, lost friends, and almost lost his life. But somehow, Rourke pulled off a comeback. He got sober, repaired some of the damage, and landed The Wrestler, 2008. A film that mirrored his own self-destructive past. It earned him an Oscar nomination, but even with success, he struggled to stay clean. Mickey Rourke should have been one of Hollywood's greatest legends. Instead, alcohol and bad choices turned him into a cautionary tale. Even today, he's a reminder of how fast Hollywood can chew you up if you let it. Dennis Hopper. He was Hollywood's ultimate wild card. For decades, he was either too drunk, too high, or too unhinged to function. Somehow, he still delivered legendary performances, even when he could barely stand upright. Hopper's drinking started early, but by the time he became famous in Easy Rider, 1969, it was out of control. He drank on set, between takes, and sometimes during filming. He was so wasted while directing the last movie, 1971, that the film became an incoherent disaster, and Hollywood blacklisted him for nearly a decade. During Apocalypse Now, 1979, Hopper was so drunk and coked out that he couldn't remember his lines. Director Francis Ford Coppola had to feed him one sentence at a time because giving him a full script was pointless. Somehow, his manic energy worked for the role, but off-screen, he was a walking train wreck. Hopper's reputation was legendary, but his career kept crashing and burning. He spent most of the 80s either too wasted to work or banned from Hollywood entirely. At his lowest, he lived in the desert, talking to himself and drinking until he hallucinated. He later admitted he was drinking 28 beers, a bottle of whiskey, and doing 3 grams of cocaine every day. Then, out of nowhere, he got sober. In 1986, he made an insane comeback with Blue Velvet, playing one of the most terrifying villains in film history. This time, the madness was acting, not alcohol. Dennis Hopper drank his way through decades of Hollywood, burning bridges and ruining opportunities. But unlike most stars on this list, he actually cleaned up and made it back. His career should have been over, but somehow he outlived his own chaos. Christopher Hitchens. He was Hollywood adjacent, a constant presence in interviews, debates, and film discussions, always with a drink in hand. Unlike most people on this list, he didn't try to hide it. In fact, he embraced his alcoholism and made it part of his public persona. Hitchens drank like it was his job. Mornings started with scotch or wine, and by afternoon he'd moved on to whiskey, vodka, or whatever was available. He once admitted that he was never fully sober past lunchtime. His friends, colleagues, and even his enemies knew that if you were meeting Hitchens, you were meeting Hitchens and his drink. Despite being constantly buzzed, he was brilliant. His ability to debate, write, and command attention never seemed to suffer, at least on the surface. He could drink glass after glass of whiskey, then go on live TV and verbally dismantle his opponents. His mind was razor sharp, even when his liver wasn't. But make no mistake, his drinking had consequences. Friends noticed his once strong voice becoming raspier, his famous wit sometimes losing its edge. He started to look tired, worn down. Years of chain smoking and drinking finally caught up to him. In 2010, he was diagnosed with esophageal cancer, the kind that heavy drinking and smoking practically guarantee. Doctors told him to quit, but he didn't see the point. He once joked that if he had his life to live over again, he would drink more, not less. Even as his body failed him, Hitchens kept writing, debating, and of course, drinking. He saw no reason to stop. It was who he was. In 2011, at 62 years old, he passed away, leaving behind a legacy of brilliant writing, sharp debates, and a lifetime of liquor-fueled intellect. Unlike Hollywood stars who drank themselves into oblivion, Hitchens never spiraled out of control, but his addiction still killed him. He was proof that even the smartest minds aren't invincible when alcohol is in the mix. Nicolas Cage. Unlike the other names on this list, he is still standing, but his reputation as Hollywood's modern-day wildcard has been fueled by years of alcohol, erratic behavior, and bizarre public meltdowns. If old-school stars drank their way into oblivion, Nicolas Cage has drunk his way into internet legend. Cage wasn't always Hollywood's unhinged meme king. In the 90s and early 2000s, he was an A-list actor with an Oscar, blockbuster hits, and critical respect. But behind the scenes, his drinking was getting out of control. Directors noticed his slurred speech, co-stars saw his erratic moods, and soon his performances started getting weirder and more unpredictable. Then, the public meltdowns started. In 2011, Cage was arrested in New Orleans for public drunkenness and disturbing the peace, after getting into a shouting match with his wife. Reports claimed he was stumbling, screaming, and too wasted to control himself. A few years later, he was caught drunkenly singing Prince's Purple Rain at a karaoke bar, so hammered that he could barely stand. The drinking wasn't just a personal issue. It wrecked his finances, too. Cage went on a spending spree fueled by booze and bad decisions, blowing through $150 million on castles, private islands, a dinosaur skull, and a pet octopus. When the IRS came knocking, he had to take every role he could get, leading to the infamous era of low-budget, straight-to-DVD Cage movies. Despite the chaos, Cage never fully collapsed like the drunks of old Hollywood. Somehow, he kept delivering performances, sometimes brilliant, sometimes downright unhinged. His 2018 film Mandy reminded people why he was a star in the first place, and in 2021, Pig earned him some of the best reviews of his career. Unlike Barrymore, Flynn, or Reed, Cage hasn't drunk himself into an early grave. Yet. But his booze-fueled antics, erratic career, and bizarre public breakdowns make him the closest thing modern Hollywood has to an old-school drunken disaster. Whether he crashes completely or somehow reinvents himself again, one thing is certain: Nicolas Cage is never boring. They were praised, paid, and plastered on every billboard. But off-camera, they were drowning in vodka, in pressure, in pain. No one dared to stop. This is what it looked like when the fame didn't fix anything. Buster Keaton's silent struggles. He was one of the biggest stars of the silent film era, stone-faced, brilliant, a master of physical comedy. But once sound came in, everything started falling apart, including him. In 1928, he signed with MGM. That deal killed his freedom. Studios now controlled his scripts, his stunts, and eventually his drinking. He didn't take it well. At first, it was casual, just a few drinks after work. Then it turned into drinking on set. Then it never stopped. By 1930, Buster was showing up hungover, forgetting lines, and walking through scenes like a ghost. Directors had to cut around him. His timing, once perfect, was gone. He started drinking whiskey in his dressing room between takes. Some days, he didn't know where he was. Others, he just didn't care. He tried to hide it, but people noticed. His wife left him in 1932. He lost access to his kids. He went on drinking binges that lasted days. At one point, MGM assigned a full-time assistant just to keep him from falling apart mid-scene. Things hit rock bottom in 1934. Buster was found wandering the street, drunk and confused. He was committed to a sanitarium for exhaustion, but it was really to dry out. He escaped in a straitjacket, literally, climbed out a window and vanished. For the next few years, he was broke and out of work. He took whatever roles he could, often uncredited or in low-budget shorts. He kept drinking. His friends said he was lost, but they didn't know how to help. Rehab wasn't really a thing back then. You either pulled yourself together or you disappeared. In the early 1940s, something changed. He met a woman named Eleanor Norris. She was 20 years younger and didn't drink. Somehow, she helped him stop. Slowly, Buster came back. He started writing again, got some TV gigs, even returned to MGM as a gag writer. He never drank like that again. Tallulah Bankhead's martini mornings. She wasn't quiet about anything, not her politics, not her lovers, and definitely not her drinking. She drank like it was her job. Breakfast started with a martini. Lunch included more. By dinner, no one could count. She grew up wealthy and wild, raised in Alabama high society. By her 20s, she was already famous on Broadway. Hollywood came calling in the 1930s, but she didn't care much for rules. Studios asked her to tone it down. She didn't. Tallulah lit cigarettes during takes, refused to stick to the script, and drank openly on set. One producer said directing her was like trying to hold water in a net. She laughed it off. She always did. If someone mentioned The Hangovers, she said, "Don't be silly. I never get hangovers. I get applause." She could be brilliant when she was focused. In The Little Foxes on stage, she played the lead role to rave reviews. But one night, she collapsed halfway through the performance. A stagehand said she'd downed 2 martinis and half a flask before curtain. The audience waited, curtain stayed closed, and Tallulah was carried out the back door. She didn't hide it. In fact, she leaned into it. On talk shows, she sipped whiskey and answered questions with slurred charm. Reporters wrote about her fabulous wreckage. She loved the drama. She called herself the world's most fabulous drunk. But it wasn't always funny. Friends said she'd disappear for days. Some weekends ended in hospitals. One doctor warned her she was drinking herself sick. She shrugged and lit another cigarette. By the 1950s, her film roles were drying up. Her voice was gravel. Her timing was off. Directors stopped calling. She stayed famous mostly for being Tallulah, loud, drunk, and outrageous. She never fully stopped drinking. Even in her later years, she was still sipping bourbon before interviews and talking circles around younger actors. But her body gave out. Liver issues, lung problems, weight loss. She died in 1968 at age 66, alone in her apartment. The cause? Pneumonia, worsened by years of heavy drinking and smoking. Billie Holiday's Booze and Blues. She had one of the most haunting voices in music history. But off stage, she fought a constant war with racism, heartbreak, and a bottle that never left her side. She started drinking young, working in nightclubs where liquor flowed like water. By the late 1930s, she was a star. Her voice could stop a room. Songs like Strange Fruit hit hard. But backstage, Billie drank to calm her nerves before shows. It started with gin, then brandy, then anything she could get her hands on. In the early 1940s, her fame exploded. So did her addiction. She was drinking before sets, between songs, and after every show. Friends said she was never fully sober. Club owners noticed too. Some nights, she forgot lyrics. Other nights, she couldn't stand. She was arrested for possession in 1947, but alcohol was always the quieter demon. Her cabaret card was revoked in New York, which meant she couldn't perform in any venue that served alcohol. That wiped out most of her income. Still, she drank. In hotel rooms, she'd sneak liquor into orange juice bottles. On the road, she hid flasks in makeup bags. Her manager tried cutting her off. She fired him. Her voice, though strained, still pulled crowds. But her memory started slipping, her temper got worse, and her drinking kept going. By 1956, she wrote a memoir. Parts of it were censored. The rest told the story of a woman in pain. In interviews, she brushed off the drinking. "I drink because I need to forget," she once said. "Some people pray. I pour." The final years were brutal. She was often broke, blacklisted, and barely functioning. In 1959, she collapsed in her New York apartment. At the hospital, they found cirrhosis, kidney failure, and fluid in her lungs. She was 44. The police showed up while she was still in bed and arrested her again for drug possession. They even posted a guard at her door. She died days later with just 70 cents in her bank account. Her voice lives on, but Billie never made peace with the bottle. The music soared. She didn't. Robert Walker's Vodka Breakdown. He had the charm, the looks, and a rising career in the 1940s. He also had vodka in his trailer, vodka in his coffee, and vodka in his veins. By the time he gave his most iconic performance, he was already falling apart. His big break came in Since You Went Away, 1944, where he starred opposite his real-life ex-wife, Jennifer Jones. It wasn't just awkward, but it was brutal. The divorce had crushed him, and he started drinking more to cope. Crew members said he shook between takes and sometimes needed help walking to set. The booze made him unpredictable. One day he was polite and professional. The next, he'd explode over nothing. He fought with directors, slurred his lines, threw furniture. MGM tried to protect him, but he was becoming a liability. In 1948, he had a breakdown on set and was admitted to the Menninger Clinic, a psychiatric hospital. The official reason was emotional exhaustion. The real reason was that he was drinking himself sick. Doctors put him on sedatives to calm his nerves. He promised to quit. He didn't. He made a short comeback in 1951 with Strangers on a Train. It was his best role, chilling, sharp, unforgettable. He played a charming psychopath. The scary part? He didn't need to stretch. Friends said he barely had to act. Alfred Hitchcock kept the camera rolling even when Walker went off script. But behind the scenes, things were still bad. He was mixing alcohol with barbiturates. He didn't sleep. He stopped eating. Some nights he called friends sobbing, convinced his life was over. In August 1951, a doctor came to his home to sedate him during one of his episodes. He was given amobarbital to calm down. He never woke up. Officially, it was an accidental reaction. Unofficially, it was alcohol, stress, and too many pills in a body that couldn't take it anymore. Robert Walker was just 32. He had 2 sons, a hit film in theaters, and a reputation that Hollywood couldn't figure out. One reviewer called him a star who burned too fast and left nothing behind but questions. The only thing more tragic than his performance was how close it was to the real thing, Diana Barrymore's broken dynasty. She was born into fame. Her father was John Barrymore, a legendary actor and legendary drunk. She got both of those traits. At first, it looked like she'd make it big. In the early 1940s, Universal Studios signed her with headlines calling her the next big Barrymore. She had the name, the face, and enough talent to turn heads. But behind it, she was already drinking hard, just like her father. She started missing rehearsals. Sometimes she'd show up so hungover production had to cancel. On stage, she slurred lines. Off stage, she collapsed in dressing rooms. One night, during a performance of Romantic Mr. Dickens, she walked off mid-scene and never returned. No explanation. Just left. By 1944, her career had stalled. Universal quietly dropped her. She married a few times, but each relationship fell apart, usually under the weight of booze and shouting matches. One ex-husband said living with her was like riding a train with no brakes. She tried Broadway again, but the drinking got in the way. Crew members hid liquor bottles backstage just to keep her sober during shows. It didn't work. Critics noticed. One review said she looked tired before she even opened her mouth. In 1957, she published a memoir called Too Much, Too Soon. It told everything: the drinking, the blackouts, the hospital stays, the suicide attempts, the family name that opened every door and then crushed her once she walked through. It sold well, but nothing changed. That same year, Warner Brothers adapted her memoir into a film. She didn't star in it. She didn't even consult. While the movie played in theaters, Diana was living in a rundown apartment, broke and drinking again. In 1960, her housekeeper found her in bed, surrounded by pills and empty bottles. The autopsy listed natural causes, but doctors said it was years of alcohol and sedatives. She was 38. She once said, "Everyone expects me to be a Barrymore, but I don't know what that means anymore." She wanted to live up to the name. Instead, it buried her. Truman Capote's talk show spirals. He wrote one of the greatest true crime books ever printed. In Cold Blood made him a literary star. But by the 1970s, most people didn't see him as a writer. They saw him as a drunk guest on late-night TV. Capote was always eccentric. But once fame hit hard, so did the partying. He was a regular at Studio 54, known for sipping chilled vodka out of tiny crystal glasses and slurring insults at whoever got too close. He called it research. Friends called it a meltdown. He didn't hide it. On the Dick Cavett Show, he showed up visibly drunk and rambled through his answers. On The Tonight Show, he flirted with Johnny Carson, made fun of other guests, and then forgot where he was. It became a pattern: invite Truman, expect a mess. Publishers started pulling back. One editor said his writing got sloppy and mean. He had promised a massive novel called Answered Prayers, meant to be his masterpiece. But when excerpts came out, they didn't land. Critics called them petty and cruel. Friends stopped returning his calls. Capote responded the only way he knew how. He drank more. By the early 80s, things had gotten grim. He bounced between friends' guest rooms and upscale rehab centers. He didn't last long in either. Sometimes he was funny and charming. Other times, he screamed at nurses and trashed hotel rooms. One friend found him in a robe on the floor, drinking out of a vase. In 1984, he moved into the home of Joanne Carson, Johnny Carson's ex-wife. She tried to help him dry out. It didn't work. On August 25th, he died in her guest room from liver failure, complicated by drug and alcohol use. He was 59. He used to say he wanted to be remembered for his words. In the end, it was the slurred ones people remembered most. Sam Peckinpah's bloody cocktails. He made violent, brilliant films. He also made enemies on set, passed out in editing rooms, and drank like the credits depended on it. In the 1960s, he directed The Wild Bunch, a western so bloody and stylish it changed the genre. But behind the camera, Sam was already deep into drinking. He kept vodka in a water bottle and whiskey in his coat. Cast and crew said he would sip through takes, bark orders mid-slur, and forget what scene they were filming. At first, producers tolerated it. His films made money and his chaos sometimes added edge, but by the 1970s, he was spiraling. On Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, 1973, he fought with the studio, missed deadlines, and drank from morning to night. Crew members found him asleep in the editing room, drooling on reels. He didn't deny it. In interviews, he joked that bourbon was his assistant director. When critics asked why his films were so violent, he said, "I'm just showing what's real." The truth was, he was barely hanging on. Studios started to panic. They began assigning shadow editors to finish his films behind his back. His name still appeared on the credits, but much of the work was done without him. He lashed out, but the studios held the power and the checkbook. By the early 1980s, he was taking whatever work he could get. He directed a few music videos. One was for Julian Lennon. Between takes, he drank alone in his trailer, coughing and shaking. His hands were too unsteady to hold a camera. He gave orders from a folding chair. Sam Peckinpah died in 1984 from heart failure. Doctors pointed to years of alcohol abuse as a major cause. Edward Furlong's fast fall. He was just 14 when he landed Terminator 2. Overnight, he became one of the most recognizable faces in Hollywood. But as fast as the fame came, the drinking followed. By the late 90s, Furlong's teen idol days were over, and he was drinking hard. It wasn't just beer at parties. Friends said he'd start the day with vodka and keep it going until he passed out. He still landed roles, American History X, Detroit Rock City, but directors had to work around his behavior. He'd show up late, forget lines, or vanish during breaks. The press caught on. In 2001, he was arrested for trying to free lobsters from a tank in a Kentucky grocery store, drunk, of course. The charges were dropped, but it made headlines. He laughed it off. Then he got arrested again and again. In 2004, he entered rehab. It didn't stick. Later that year, he was spotted staggering out of a club in Los Angeles, glassy-eyed and barely able to stand. Paparazzi caught the whole thing. He tried to stay out of sight, but the photos followed him everywhere. Then came the restraining orders. His ex-girlfriend accused him of violence while intoxicated. In 2010, he was banned from seeing his son after testing positive for alcohol. The court records show a pattern: relapse, arrest, rehab, repeat. Studios stopped calling. He lost the role in Terminator 3. By 2013, he was facing jail time and showed up in court looking pale, bloated, and exhausted. The judge ordered another rehab stint, his fifth. In 2019, he claimed to be sober and was briefly brought back for Terminator. Dark fate, though his appearance was limited to digital footage. He said it felt like a second chance. Whether it stuck is unclear. Misha Barton's vodka fog. In the early 2000s, she was everywhere. After the OC launched her to fame, she became a fashion icon, a tabloid fixture, and a regular on red carpets. But behind the flashes and premieres, the drinking was building fast. She was only 17 when the show started. By 19, she was hitting LA clubs almost nightly. Paparazzi followed her from bar to bar. Photos showed her stumbling out of back doors, getting into cars barefoot, or clutching energy drinks that weren't just energy. Friends said vodka was her go-to. In 2007, it all caught up with her. On December 27th, she was pulled over in West Hollywood. She had no license, failed a sobriety test, and was charged with DUI. Officers found illegal substances and an open bottle of alcohol in the car. She was booked, photographed, and released the next morning. The story made national headlines. She entered rehab shortly after, claiming it was for exhaustion. But insiders said it was about more than that. Her behavior had become erratic. She stopped showing up for meetings, lost roles, burned bridges. Even her management team backed away. In 2009, things took a darker turn. Police were called to her LA home for a mental health check. She was placed on an involuntary psychiatric hold. Later, she said the incident was triggered by stress and medication, but alcohol was still in the picture. Over the next few years, she tried to rebuild, but the pattern didn't break. More nights out, more shaky interviews. On The Hill's New Beginnings in 2019, she opened up about how fame and pressure pushed her into unhealthy habits. She didn't name the substances, but the implication was clear. Barton said she wanted to stay sober, but her history was hard to ignore. For a long time, she wasn't an actress in control. She was a walking headline. The stardom came fast. The crash came faster. Misha didn't just lose momentum. She got swallowed by the fog. Shia LaBeouf's unraveling on screen. He didn't just party. He unraveled in public. The arrests, meltdowns, and blackouts, alcohol was behind nearly all of it. After Transformers made him a global name, Shia drank hard behind the scenes. On the set of Lawless, 2012, he admitted he got drunk on real moonshine to get into character. "I didn't know any other way to do it," he said. Co-stars noticed. He was erratic, unpredictable, sometimes slurring before lunch. That same year, he was spotted at a London pub stumbling into fights and being escorted out. The footage made the rounds online. His team blamed stress. Fans blamed the bottle. In 2014, things got worse. At a performance of Cabaret in New York, he was arrested for smoking indoors, shouting at the cast, and slapping someone on the rear. He was reportedly drunk when police arrived and had to be fitted with a face mask at the station. The next day, he apologized. A week later, he was drinking again. More arrests followed. In 2015, police picked him up in Austin, Texas, after he ran through traffic screaming at strangers. Officers said he smelled like booze and couldn't stand still. He tried rehab, then relapsed. Over and over. In 2017, a viral video showed him cursing out officers during a drunken outburst in Savannah, Georgia. "You're going to hell, straight to hell," he said, slurring and red-eyed. It wasn't his first arrest that year, or his last. He later admitted he was drinking to deal with fear. "I didn't want to be an actor anymore," he said. "I wanted to disappear." Instead, he kept showing up in headlines, drunk, damaged, and out of control. Therapists diagnosed him with PTSD and complex trauma. Rehab helped briefly, then more court dates, more apologies. Even when sober, the damage lingered. Studios backed off, collaborators cut ties. In recent years, he's claimed sobriety, said he's working on himself, but the past is heavy. The footage, the police records, the slurred interviews, they're still out there. Shia once said he used alcohol to numb the noise. The problem was, it just made everything louder. Behind the red carpet lies a darker side of fame. Hollywood icons revered by millions, caught in the most jaw-dropping drunken scandals. From Errol Flynn's wild escapades to Robert Downey Jr.'s struggles, uncover the secrets the stars tried to hide. This is the real Hollywood. Errol Flynn's Wild Nights, 1940s. An iconic actor of the 1940s known for his swashbuckling roles in films like The Adventures of Robin Hood and Captain Blood, Errol Flynn was infamous for his off-screen antics. Flynn's penchant for heavy drinking and partying led to numerous scandals. One of the most notorious incidents occurred in 1942 when he was arrested for statutory rape involving two underage girls, Betty Hansen and Peggy Satterlee. Although he was acquitted, the trial brought his wild lifestyle into the spotlight. Flynn's behavior was a staple of Hollywood gossip columns. He was often seen at bars and nightclubs, drinking excessively and getting into brawls. His favorite haunts included the famed Trocadero on the Sunset Strip and the Macambo nightclub, where he would often be found in the company of fellow actors and high-profile socialites. Flynn's notorious parties at his Mulholland Drive estate, nicknamed Cirrhosis by the Sea, were legendary for their debauchery, attracting Hollywood's elite and often ending in chaos. His autobiography, My Wicked, Wicked Ways, detailed many of these exploits, cementing his reputation as one of Hollywood's original bad boys. The book provides a vivid account of his hedonistic lifestyle, including tales of drunken escapades and romantic entanglements. Flynn once reportedly quipped, "I like my whiskey old and my women young," a line that epitomized his carefree and often reckless approach to life. Despite his personal life, Flynn continued to have a successful career. He starred in several notable films during the 1940s, including They Died with Their Boots On and Gentleman Jim. Spencer Tracy's Struggles with Alcohol, 1950s. One of Hollywood's most respected actors, Spencer Tracy battled alcoholism for much of his life. Known for his roles in classics like Guess Who's Coming to Dinner and Inherit the Wind, Tracy's drinking often affected his work. In the 1950s, his struggle became more apparent, with multiple incidents of public intoxication. One particularly notable event occurred in 1953 when Tracy was found passed out in the lobby of the Beverly Hills Hotel after a night of heavy drinking. His drinking affected his health and led to several hospitalizations. He often experienced severe hangovers and dehydration, requiring medical attention. Tracy's longtime companion, Katharine Hepburn, frequently stepped in to support him, even going so far as to monitor his drinking and assist him in his recovery efforts. Despite his struggles, Tracy's talent remained undeniable. He continued to deliver powerful performances in films such as Bad Day at Black Rock and The Old Man and the Sea. His ability to convey deep emotion and complexity in his characters made him a beloved figure in Hollywood. Directors admired his professionalism on set, even though they were aware of his battles with alcohol. Tracy's alcoholism strained his relationships with colleagues and affected his physical appearance. His once robust frame became increasingly frail, and his face showed the signs of heavy drinking. Yet his performances never wavered in their intensity and brilliance. Hepburn once said of Tracy, "He was a drunk, but he was my drunk," highlighting her unwavering support and love for him despite his addiction. His addiction also took a toll on his family life. Tracy was separated from his wife Louise, although they never divorced, largely due to his Catholic faith. His children, John and Susie, were deeply affected by his alcoholism and the instability it brought to their lives. Judy Garland's troubled life, 1960s. The beloved star of The Wizard of Oz, Judy Garland had a tumultuous life marked by substance abuse. In the 1960s, her struggles with alcohol and prescription drugs became more pronounced. Garland's dependence on substances led to erratic behavior and numerous incidents of public intoxication. In 1964, Garland was found intoxicated and disoriented in a London hotel. She had to cancel several performances due to her condition. Her addiction issues were further exacerbated by the pressures of constant touring and financial difficulties. Despite attempts to rehabilitate her image, her addictions continued to plague her. Garland's manager, Stevie Phillips, described her as being so drunk she couldn't stand, highlighting the severity of her condition. Her substance abuse and deteriorating health made it difficult for her to secure stable work in the industry. Her once radiant voice and commanding stage presence were often overshadowed by her personal struggles. Nevertheless, Garland managed to deliver a few notable performances during this period, including a memorable concert at Carnegie Hall in 1961, which became a best-selling album and earned her a Grammy. Garland's relationships also suffered due to her addictions. She went through multiple marriages and divorces, each contributing to her emotional instability. Her children, including Liza Minnelli, often witnessed her struggles, adding a layer of familial tension to her already chaotic life. Garland's attempts at sobriety were frequent, but often short-lived, as the demands of her career and personal life repeatedly drove her back to substance use. Dean Martin's party persona, 1950s to 1970s. A member of the famous Rat Pack, Dean Martin was known for his smooth voice and charming on-screen presence. Off-screen, Martin cultivated a persona of the perpetual partygoer, often seen with a drink in hand. While some of his drinking was part of his act, Martin did have a penchant for alcohol. Throughout the 1950s to the 1970s, Martin's love for drinking was well documented. He often appeared on stage and television seemingly inebriated, playing into his laid-back, fun-loving image. His performances on The Dean Martin Show and the Dean Martin Celebrity Roasts featured him frequently sipping what appeared to be alcoholic beverages, adding to his carefree persona. This image was so convincing that many believed he was always under the influence, even though much of it was for show. Martin's association with the Rat Pack, alongside Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., and others, only solidified his reputation as a hard-drinking entertainer. Their performances in Las Vegas were legendary for their humor, music, and revelry, with Martin often playing the role of the amiable drunk. Despite his heavy drinking, Martin maintained a successful career in music, film, and television. He starred in a series of popular films, including Some Came Running and Rio Bravo, and recorded numerous hit songs like Everybody Loves Somebody and Ain't That a Kick in the Head. Behind the scenes, Martin's drinking did have its limits. His daughter, Dina Martin, once said, "He liked to drink, but he knew his limits," suggesting that his on-stage persona was partly an act. In reality, Martin was known to switch his whiskey glass for apple juice during performances to maintain his composure while still entertaining the crowd. Marlon Brando's off-screen drama, 1950s to 1970s. Celebrated for his roles in A Streetcar Named Desire and The Godfather, Marlon Brando was known for his unpredictable behavior and off-screen drama. In the 1950s, Brando's temperamental nature and disdain for Hollywood norms led to clashes with directors and producers. His personal life was equally chaotic, with numerous affairs and a penchant for excess. By the 1970s, Brando's behavior became even more erratic, with reports of heavy drinking and weight gain affecting his performances. Despite these issues, his talent kept him in demand, although his career was marked by these tumultuous periods. One of Brando's most infamous episodes occurred in 1953 during the filming of The Wild One. Known for his method acting, Brando immersed himself fully into the rebellious character he portrayed. Off-screen, he continued this behavior, frequently getting into altercations and showing up drunk on set. His clashes with director Laszlo Benedek and other crew members became legendary, further cementing his reputation as difficult but brilliant. In the 1960s, Brando's heavy drinking became more public. While filming Mutiny on the Bounty in Tahiti in 1962, his off-screen antics caused significant delays and budget overruns. He would often disappear for days, indulging in alcohol-fueled parties that disrupted the production. His unpredictable behavior led to frequent arguments with the film's director, Louis Milestone, and the studio, which struggled to keep the project on track. By the 1970s, Brando's erratic behavior and physical decline were evident. His performance in The Godfather was critically acclaimed, yet behind the scenes, his unpredictable actions and excessive drinking caused tension. His weight gain and lack of discipline were issues that directors had to navigate delicately. On the set of Last Tango in Paris, director Bernardo Bertolucci had to manage Brando's erratic schedule and moods, often exacerbated by his drinking. Elizabeth Taylor's tumultuous love life, 1950s to 1970s. Known for her roles in Cleopatra and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, Elizabeth Taylor was as famous for her tumultuous personal life as she was for her acting. Throughout the 1950s to the 1970s, Taylor's numerous marriages and publicized affairs made headlines. Her relationship with Richard Burton, fueled by passion and alcohol, was particularly notable. The two married and divorced twice, with their fiery relationship often playing out in the public eye. Taylor's struggles with substance abuse, including alcohol and prescription drugs, further complicated her personal life and career. One of the most infamous incidents highlighting Taylor's issues with alcohol occurred during the filming of Cleopatra in the early 1960s. Taylor and Burton's on-set affair, fueled by their heavy drinking, became a public scandal. The media frenzy surrounding their relationship overshadowed the film itself. Paparazzi frequently captured the couple leaving bars and nightclubs in a drunken stupor, fueling tabloid stories and public fascination with their tumultuous romance. Another notable episode happened in 1974 when Taylor and Burton were dining at the Dorchester Hotel in London. Both had been drinking heavily, and a heated argument ensued which quickly escalated into a loud and public confrontation. The incident ended with Taylor throwing a glass of wine in Burton's face. Such public displays of their volatile relationship, often exacerbated by alcohol, became a regular spectacle for the press, and further cemented their reputations as Hollywood's most tempestuous couple. Peter O'Toole's legendary drinking, 1960s. Peter O'Toole, known for his iconic role in Lawrence of Arabia, was famous for his heavy drinking throughout the 1960s. His off-screen escapades were as legendary as his performances. One night in 1963, O'Toole and fellow actor Richard Harris reportedly drank their way through several London pubs, ending in a drunken brawl that required police intervention. O'Toole himself recounted in an interview, "I did quite enjoy the taste of alcohol a lot, and there were nights when I would drink a bar dry." His drinking was so notorious that in one incident he was found passed out in a public fountain in Rome. This wild lifestyle often led to outrageous antics that became the stuff of Hollywood legend, like the time he supposedly rode a camel through the streets of Dublin after a night of heavy drinking. Despite his wild behavior, O'Toole's talent kept him in high demand. Directors and producers were willing to overlook his off-screen antics because of his exceptional acting abilities. He delivered powerful performances in films such as Beckett and The Lion in Winter, earning him critical acclaim and several Academy Award nominations. However, his drinking began to take a toll on his health and reputation. He was known to show up on set late or inebriated, causing frustration among his colleagues. O'Toole's drinking also led to numerous health issues. He underwent surgery in the late 1970s for pancreatitis, a condition exacerbated by his excessive alcohol consumption. His doctors warned him that he had to stop drinking if he wanted to live, which prompted him to significantly reduce his alcohol intake. Despite these challenges, O'Toole continued to act, delivering memorable performances well into his later years. Richard Burton's public drunkenness, 1970s. Another star of the 1960s and 70s, Richard Burton was infamous for his public bouts of drunkenness. Known for his turbulent relationship with Elizabeth Taylor, their fights were often fueled by alcohol. In 1974, during a visit to London, Burton was seen staggering out of a bar, barely able to walk. One notable incident occurred in 1975 when Burton was ejected from a theater after causing a scene during a performance. According to witnesses, he was shouting incoherently and had to be physically removed. The media had a field day, and the story was splashed across headlines. This public humiliation highlighted the extent of his alcohol dependency and its impact on his public image. Burton's drinking habits were well documented and became part of his public persona. He was often seen with a drink in hand at social events, parties, and even on film sets. His penchant for alcohol not only strained his relationships but also affected his professional life. Directors and co-stars often had to contend with his unpredictable behavior and frequent absences due to his drinking binges. Despite these incidents, Burton continued to work. Though his excessive drinking affected his performances and health, his once powerful voice and commanding presence began to wane, and his roles became less frequent and less prominent. He starred in several notable films during this period, including The Exorcist II, The Heretic, and Equus, but his performances were often overshadowed by his off-screen antics. Burton's health deteriorated significantly due to his drinking. He suffered from liver cirrhosis and other alcohol-related illnesses, leading to multiple hospitalizations. Despite the toll on his body, Burton seemed resigned to his fate. He once said, "I was drunk for years. I was happy drunk," reflecting a sense of acceptance and perhaps denial of the severe consequences of his lifestyle. John Belushi's party lifestyle, 1980s. The beloved star of Animal House and the Blues Brothers, John Belushi had a reputation for hard partying that ultimately led to his tragic end. In the early 1980s, Belushi's drug and alcohol use was spiraling out of control. Known for his larger-than-life personality, Belushi often indulged in wild parties, which were infamous for their excess and debauchery. Belushi's reckless lifestyle came to a devastating halt in March 1982 when he was found dead in his bungalow at the Chateau Marmont Hotel in Los Angeles. The coroner's report revealed a lethal combination of cocaine and heroin, often referred to as a speedball. His sudden death at the age of 33 shocked the entertainment world and highlighted the dangers of Hollywood's party lifestyle. Belushi's struggle with substance abuse was well known among his friends and colleagues. Efforts were made to help him curb his addictions, but his escalating use of drugs and alcohol made it increasingly difficult. Mickey Rourke's downward spiral, late 1980s. A rising star in the 1980s with films like 9½ Weeks and Angel Heart, Mickey Rourke saw his career nosedive due to his off-screen behavior. In 1989, Rourke was arrested for public intoxication after a bar fight in Los Angeles. Witnesses described the scene as chaotic, with Rourke shouting and throwing punches. This incident was just one of many that highlighted his turbulent lifestyle. Rourke's behavior led to a reputation as a difficult and unreliable actor. Directors were hesitant to work with him, and his career suffered as a result. His erratic actions on set and frequent altercations with co-stars further tarnished his professional image. Rourke later admitted in interviews that his drinking and aggressive behavior were a form of self-destruction. "I was on a path of destruction, and alcohol was my fuel," he said. The late 1980s and 1990s were marked by a series of personal and professional setbacks for Rourke. His marriage to actress Deborah Feuer ended in divorce, and his subsequent relationships were equally tumultuous. His struggles with alcohol and substance abuse continued, leading to more arrests and a further decline in his career. The once promising actor found himself increasingly marginalized in Hollywood, with fewer roles being offered. Rourke's passion for boxing, which he had pursued before becoming an actor, resurfaced during this period. He returned to the ring in the early 1990s, hoping to escape his troubled acting career and personal demons. Although he achieved some success as a boxer, the sport took a physical toll on his body and further isolated him from the film industry. It wasn't until the 2000s that Rourke began to turn his life around. He sought therapy and gradually reduced his alcohol consumption. His comeback role in The Wrestler, 2008, marked a significant turning point, earning him critical acclaim and a Golden Globe Award. Despite his redemption arc, the damage to his career from his earlier behavior was significant and took years to repair. Robert Downey Jr. struggles, 1990. In the early 90s, Robert Downey Jr. was known for his incredible talent and growing career. However, his substance abuse issues became public knowledge in 1996 when he was arrested in Malibu. Found under the influence of drugs, he was driving erratically and speeding down Sunset Boulevard. Police found heroin, cocaine, and a .357 Magnum revolver in his car. Downey's arrest shocked the entertainment industry and his fans. His talent had been widely recognized, and he had been on a promising career trajectory with roles in films like Less Than Zero and Chaplin, for which he received an Academy Award nomination. The incident in Malibu, however, marked the beginning of a very public struggle with addiction. Downey later said in a court hearing, "It's like I have a shotgun in my mouth, and I've got my finger on the trigger, and I like the taste of gunmetal," poignantly describing the grip addiction had on him. Despite repeated attempts at rehabilitation, his struggle with addiction continued. Between 1996 and 2001, Downey was arrested several times, each incident marking a significant low in his career. His arrests included a 1997 incident where he was found passed out in a neighbor's home and a 1999 incident where he missed a court-ordered drug test, resulting in a jail sentence. His recurring legal issues led to his being fired from the television series Ally McBeal, a significant blow given his acclaimed performance on the show. The once bright star saw his career prospects dim as Hollywood studios and producers became increasingly reluctant to work with him due to his unpredictability and legal troubles. Throughout these years, Downey's talent remained evident, but his addiction overshadowed his professional achievements. His relationships also suffered, with his first marriage to Deborah Falconer ending in divorce partly due to his substance abuse problems. Despite the support of friends and family, Downey's path to recovery was fraught with setbacks.